Gaslighting is one of the most dangerous weapons in a toxic dynamic, not because it leaves visible scars, but because it makes you doubt your own reality. It's not just someone lying to you, it's someone twisting your memory, reshaping your emotions, and slowly convincing you that you can't trust yourself. And once they succeed in that, they don't even have to control you. You'll control yourself for them. You'll silence your own instincts, question your own sanity, and give them the power without realizing it. The scary part, gaslighting doesn't usually come with fireworks. It creeps in quietly. A denial here, a minimization there, until eventually you're apologizing for things you never did and begging for clarity from the very person who's taking it away. That's why today we're breaking it down, not just what gaslighting looks like, but how it works on your nervous system, and most importantly, how you can respond without losing your grip on reality. Because silence in the face of lies is not strength, but clarity, that's unshakable. And once you see the patterns clearly, you'll never unsee them again. When people hear the word gaslighting, they often picture it as just lying, or maybe as someone exaggerating their side of the story. But gaslighting is far more sinister than that. At its core, it's a deliberate attack on your perception of reality. It's not about a single argument. It's about slowly eroding your trust in yourself so that you stop questioning them and start questioning you. Think of it like this. Every human being has two anchors, the world around them and the voice inside them. The world tells you what's happening. Your inner voice interprets it and tells you what to do with it. Gaslighting severs both anchors. They deny what you saw, so you doubt the world. Then they ridicule how you feel, so you doubt your inner voice. And once both anchors are cut, you're adrift in confusion, looking to them as the only stable point left. That's how they gain control, not through force, but through distortion. The tactics can be subtle. They'll say, "That never happened," even when you know it did. They'll tell you, "You're imagining things," until you start wondering if you really are. They'll accuse you of being too sensitive when you point out something that hurt you. They'll twist timelines, deny conversations, or use phrases like "you're crazy" as if it's just casual banter. At first, you resist. You insist you're right, you argue harder, you fight to defend your memory, but here's the trap. The more you fight, the more they push, and the more exhausted you become. Slowly, you stop standing your ground because it feels easier to just give in. And that's the moment the gaslight works. Not when they convince you they're right, but when they convince you to stop trusting yourself. Stoic wisdom says clarity is freedom. When someone bends reality, your task is not to out-argue them. It's to refuse to surrender your inner clarity. Gaslighting only works if you abandon your own mind. And once you recognize that, you begin to see it for what it is. Not truth, not logic, but a strategy designed to destabilize you. Gaslighting isn't random. It follows a pattern. Once you learn the tactics, you'll start to see them everywhere. The first tactic is denial. They'll look you in the eye and say, "That never happened," even when you know it did. This works not because it's convincing, but because it makes you pause. That pause plants doubt, and doubt is the crack they widen over time. The second tactic is minimization. Maybe they can't deny what happened, but they'll strip it of meaning. "You're overreacting. It wasn't that bad. I was just joking." This shifts the blame from their behavior onto your perception. Suddenly, the issue isn't what they did, it's how you're too sensitive for noticing. Then there's blame shifting. Instead of answering for their actions, they flip the script. You bring up their betrayal, and somehow it becomes about how you weren't supportive enough. You point out their lie, and suddenly you're the untrusting one. By the end of the conversation, you're apologizing while they walk away clean. Another classic tactic is rewriting history. They'll retell events in a way that paints them as the reasonable one and you as the unstable one. Over time, if you hear their version enough, you start to second-guess your memory. You wonder if maybe you did say it differently, if maybe you did remember it wrong. They don't have to erase reality completely. They just have to fog it enough that you stop trusting your own vision. And finally, projection. This is when they accuse you of the very thing they're guilty of. They cheat, but they accuse you of being disloyal. They lie, but they insist you're hiding things. It's a brutal tactic because it keeps you on the defensive while they remain hidden. Each of these tactics has the same goal: to destabilize you, to drain your energy in endless loops of defending, explaining, and questioning yourself. That's why gaslighters rarely win through logic. They win by exhausting you until you stop fighting back. Stoic wisdom says clarity is the foundation of freedom. The moment you name these tactics, you break their spell. You stop engaging in their frame. You realize the game isn't about proving what happened, it's about refusing to surrender your own perception. Because once you can say, this is denial, this is blame shifting, this is minimization, their words lose power. They're not truth, they're strategy. Gaslighting doesn't just confuse you in the moment, it wears you down over time. Every denial, every twisted memory, every "you're too sensitive" chips away at your emotional foundation. It's like a slow leak in your soul. You start waking up with anxiety before you even see them. You hesitate to speak your truth because you already know they'll find a way to flip it back on you. Eventually, you stop trusting your own instincts. And once you stop trusting yourself, you're no longer living freely and you're living in their shadow. That's why gaslighting is so dangerous. It doesn't just win arguments, it rewrites your relationship with yourself. It convinces you to silence your voice before they ever have to. It conditions you to live in doubt, to fear your own feelings, to beg for clarity from the same person who thrives on keeping you in the fog. And the longer you stay in that cycle, the more you forget what it feels like to trust yourself. That's not just manipulation, that's psychological warfare. And here's where I want to remind you, you don't have to fight this unarmed. That's why I created Surviving the Toxic Bond. The audiobook especially is designed for these exact moments when you feel like you're losing grip on your reality. You can listen to it on your commute while you're walking, or in those quiet hours where the confusion feels overwhelming. It's like having a guide in your ear, reminding you what's real, helping you cut through the fog, and giving you the tools to reclaim your clarity. And if you're someone who likes to see the words and really study them, the ebook is there too. Some people even read and listen at the same time to make it stick, to retrain both the mind and the body at once. You'll find the links in the description and pinned comment. Because here's the truth, you can't out-argue a gaslighter, you can't convince them to admit the truth, but you can stop letting their distortion live inside you, and that starts with equipping yourself to see clearly. Once you have the tools, their games don't work the same way anymore. You see through it, you name it, and you stop carrying the weight that was never yours to carry. To protect yourself from gaslighting, you need to be able to recognize it in real time. Because once you can name it, you strip away its power. Let's break down the most common tactics so you can start spotting them as they happen. The first is flat-out denial. This is the simplest, but also one of the most damaging. You bring up something they said or did, and they respond with, "That never happened." Even if you've got the memory crystal clear, even if others witnessed it, they'll look you dead in the eye and reject it. The point isn't to convince you right away, it's to make you question whether your memory can really be trusted. Then there's minimization. Instead of denying the event, they downplay its importance. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It was just a joke. You're being too sensitive." Notice what's happening here. The focus shifts from what they did to how you reacted. Suddenly the problem isn't their betrayal, their disrespect, or their lie. The problem is your sensitivity. This tactic is designed to make you feel guilty for even bringing it up. Another powerful tactic is blame shifting. This is when the conversation suddenly flips. You confront them about lying, and within minutes they're accusing you of being distrustful. You call them out for hurting you, and somehow it turns into a lecture on how you've failed them. By the end, you're apologizing while they've completely sidestepped responsibility. Gaslighters also use rewriting history. They'll retell events in a way that casts them as the rational one and paints you as unstable. For example, if you remember them losing their temper, they'll insist you provoked it. If you recall them ignoring you for days, they'll claim you were the one being distant. Over time, these rewrites start to sink in, and you begin wondering if maybe their version is the truth. And then there's projection, one of the most toxic tactics of all. This is when they accuse you of the very things they're guilty of. If they lie, they accuse you of dishonesty. If they cheat, they accuse you of betrayal. It's a way of keeping you on the defensive while their own actions stay hidden in the shadows. All of these tactics work for one reason. They drain you. They drag you into circular conversations where the goal is never resolution. The goal is confusion. And once you're confused, they've already won. Stoic wisdom says the only way to withstand lies is to stand firmly in your own clarity. That means when you spot these tactics, you don't need to argue endlessly. You don't need to prove your memory like it's on trial. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply naming it to yourself. This is blame shifting. This is minimization. This is denial. Because once you name it, you anchor yourself back into reality. You stop chasing their shifting story and you start holding on to your own. The danger of gaslighting is that it doesn't just distort the story, it makes you doubt yourself. And once you've surrendered trust in your own perception, you've surrendered the strongest defense you have. That's why you need shields, mental practices that protect you from their distortion and keep you anchored in clarity. The first shield is evidence over emotion. Gaslighters thrive on making you feel wrong, even when you know you're right. So when they start twisting, don't lean on the haze of memory alone. Document, write things down, save messages, keep track of what was said and when. Not to argue with them later, but to remind yourself of reality when the fog sets in. The truth is not what they say it is. The truth is what you can see, hear, and record for yourself. The second shield is detachment from the battle for agreement. This is where most people get trapped, trying to make the gaslighter admit they're wrong. But you don't need their validation to confirm your truth. Stop arguing to be believed. Start anchoring yourself in, I know what I saw, I know how I feel, that's enough. When you no longer need them to validate your reality, their weapon loses its edge. The third shield is calm presence. Gaslighters thrive on dragging you into chaos. They want you frustrated, raising your voice, doubting yourself. But when you stay calm, even silent, you disrupt the cycle. You refuse to match their noise, and in that stillness, you keep control of yourself. Calmness doesn't mean ignoring what's happening. It means not letting their chaos decide your state. The fourth shield is perspective. A Stoic never assumes every battle is worth fighting. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Is this person's distortion worth explaining myself over again and again? Often the answer is no. By recognizing that not every attack deserves a response, you conserve your strength for battles that matter. And the final shield is community. Gaslighting works best in isolation. When you're alone, their words are the only reality you hear. But when you share your experiences with people you trust, friends, family, mentors, you realize you're not crazy, you're not imagining it, and you're not weak. You see your experience reflected back to you, and that reflection protects you from internalizing the lies. Stoic wisdom says, no one can steal your clarity unless you hand it over. And gaslighting is exactly that. A request for you to hand over your clarity in exchange for their distortion. Your shields are the practices that let you say, no, I will not give you my mind. I will not abandon myself to your lies. Once you've been gaslit, it's not just about spotting the tactics or defending yourself in the moment. It's about rebuilding the parts of you that were slowly dismantled. Because gaslighting doesn't just confuse you temporarily. It leaves behind cracks in your confidence, your trust in yourself, and even your sense of identity. Reclaiming your power means filling those cracks with something stronger than what was there before. The first step is rebuilding trust in your own perception. Every time you feel that instinctive doubt, did I overreact? Did I imagine it? Am I crazy? Stop and remind yourself, no, I am allowed to trust my own experience. That simple shift pulls you back into your center. Over time, you rebuild that bond with yourself that the gaslighter tried to sever. The second step is withdrawing from the cycle. Gaslighting is designed to keep you engaged, arguing, defending, explaining, chasing, but the most powerful move you can make is to disengage. When you stop playing their game, you stop feeding the distortion. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much about your peace to hand it over to lies. The third step is reframing the narrative. Gaslighters make you feel like your sensitivity is weakness. But in reality, your sensitivity is awareness. It's what allowed you to notice something was wrong in the first place. Instead of shaming yourself for being too much, recognize that your feelings were the warning signs trying to protect you. What was used against you can become your strength once you stop apologizing for it. The fourth step is self-respect through boundaries. Every time you choose silence over arguing, every time you choose distance over re-engagement, every time you say, I know what I know, and I don't need you to agree, you're reclaiming your dignity. Boundaries don't always mean cutting someone off completely, though sometimes that's necessary. They mean refusing to let someone else dictate what's real for you. And finally, use the pain as fuel. Gaslighting will either leave you broken, or it will leave you sharper than you've ever been. The difference lies in what you do with the experience. If you treat it as a reminder of how vulnerable the mind can be and how necessary it is to master your inner clarity, then the very thing that tried to destroy you becomes the reason you rise. Stoic wisdom says the true victory isn't in conquering others, but in conquering yourself. When you reclaim your power from gaslighting, you're not just rejecting their lies. You're proving to yourself that no one can rewrite your reality unless you allow it. And that's when you stop being their pawn and start becoming your own master again. At its core, gaslighting has never been about truth. It's never been about what really happened, what was really said, or what the facts actually are. Gaslighting is about one thing: control. The gaslighter doesn't care if you secretly know they're lying. What they care about is whether they can make you doubt yourself enough to hand over your power. Once you start second-guessing your memory, once you start apologizing just to keep the peace, once you start relying on them for clarity, they've already won. That's the heart of gaslighting. It's not a debate, it's a power play. And the sooner you see that, the sooner you stop playing their game. Because the truth is this: you don't need their agreement to validate your reality. You don't need their permission to trust your instincts. You don't need their version of events to stand firmly in what you know. The moment you stop seeking confirmation from the very person trying to confuse you, the gaslight loses its flame. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes so vital. A Stoic doesn't let external voices decide their internal state. They don't hand over their peace every time someone throws a distorted story their way. Instead, they anchor themselves in clarity, in reason, in their own unshakable presence. And that's what you must do when faced with gaslighting. Stop arguing, stop begging to be believed, and start trusting that your perception is enough. Because when you step back, you see the bigger picture. Gaslighting isn't proof that you're weak. It's proof that someone was terrified of your strength. They knew that if you trusted yourself, you'd be free. So they tried to cloud your vision. They tried to cut you off from your own clarity. But the fact that you're here now seeking truth proves that they didn't succeed. You're already on the path of breaking free. Freedom doesn't come from convincing them to stop lying. It comes from refusing to let their lies live inside you. That's the shift. That's the moment you reclaim yourself. And that's when you realize gaslighting was never about what was real. It was about whether you could be controlled. And now you know the answer: you can't. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this: gaslighting was never about truth. It was always about control. And the moment you stop chasing their version of reality, the moment you anchor yourself in your own clarity, their power collapses. You don't need their agreement, you don't need their permission, and you don't need to argue endlessly to prove what you already know. The strength is in staying calm, staying clear, and refusing to hand over your mind. And remember, If you want to go deeper into breaking these cycles, download Surviving the Toxic Bond. The audiobook is there if you want to listen and carry the lessons with you daily, and the ebook if you prefer to read, or use both together if you want it to sink in fully. The links are waiting in the description and the pinned comment. Now, if this video spoke to you, don't just keep it to yourself. Like the video so more people can find it. Drop a comment below and share your own story. Your words might be the lifeline someone else needs. Subscribe if you haven't already, because these lessons are only going to get deeper. And share this with someone you know is struggling with manipulation, because sometimes clarity is contagious, and one spark of truth can burn through years of lies. Always remember this: no one can gaslight you unless you hand over your trust in yourself. Hold your frame, guard your peace, and never let someone else's distortion become your reality. Silence the lies by standing firm in truth. Because once you trust yourself again, no one can ever take that from you.